Hello, and welcome to Forget What You Learned, a place for families to stop and reflect on the modern state of education. We empower you to challenge your own thinking about today's traditional school system and ask the question, are my kids thriving? I'm Cory Greenberg, a parent in the trenches just like you, and I chat with innovators, experts, and other parents who are changing the conversation, inspiring families to reevaluate how we define academic success. This podcast is brought to you by Pacific Preparatory and Tutor Corps, sister organizations molding education through innovative one-on-one learning for students in today's digital world. Hello, and welcome to the podcast today. I'm Cory Greenberg, your host, and I'm here with our two producers, Mel Nichols and Staci Stutsman. If you are wondering what this podcast is all about, we're going to give you the answers that you need right here, right now. The backstory is that we all work together at Tutor Corps and Pacific Preparatory, which are sister organizations that specialize in customized one-on-one education. While Tutor Corps provides subject-based academic and executive functioning support for students enrolled in a range of school environments, Pacific Prep, or PAC Prep as we like to call it, is an accredited K-12 independent school where all the learning is one-on-one and designed specifically for each and every student who meet with their teachers virtually. There are a lot of online schools out there, but what sets PAC Prep apart is that all the learning is done live between teacher and student, no piles of worksheets or plug-and-play curriculum. Because of the high level of customization, PAC Prep serves a wide variety of learners. We have students with complex learning differences or giftedness, students whose families travel and want to take a high-quality education around the world with them, serious student athletes who need flexible scheduling, as well as families who are just looking for a solution outside of our traditional system because they believe in our model and that it's the ideal way for their kids to love learning and to be successful, healthy adults. The idea for the podcast was born in a meeting between the three of us, where we were discussing how much we wished parents out there knew and understood the issues facing the modern system and what it's doing to some of our youth. Because we often talk to families who never envisioned seeking out a one-on-one virtual school in their master plans, we're always in conversations about the failings of the system and who's out there not only raising awareness, but also trying to change it from the inside out. That said, I'm a mom of 3 school-age kids who all are in a traditional school. Before joining the Tutor Corps PAC Prep team, I never thought about something different either. And I thought my kids were okay. And all in all, they actually are. But with my oldest going through a tough middle school adjustment, as I think most kids do, it has shined a light on some of the issues I've seen other families struggle with too. So I'm learning along with all of you listeners as we bring on guests who focus in on some of these topics. And if my kids don't end up as full-time PAC Prep students, I still want to make sure that we as a family are focusing on the right things in terms of their education and their overall well-being. So I'm going to turn over the microphone to Staci and Mel to introduce themselves and just tell our listeners a little bit about their own why.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. Hi, everyone. My name is Staci. I've been working with PAC Prep and Tutor Corps for the last 6 or 7 years. I was originally coming out of higher education. I taught English in the college classroom for 6 years. And then when I was transitioning out of academia, I actually started working with students one-on-one with us, both as a tutor and as an instructor of record for a bunch of English and social studies middle school classes. And in this time, my eyes were really opened to all of the different ways that education could exist. I think I went through a pretty traditional education experience. I'm very much a chaser of the A and very validation based. And so sort of seeing the way that education could look a little bit differently when I was really working with students and seeing who they were and helping, shape the curriculum around who they were, it was pretty fundamental. So as I've come onto the leadership team at our organizations, I've just continued to think more and more about the ways that we can open up students' eyes and teachers' eyes and families' eyes to how education can look a little bit differently. And so when we decided to launch Forget What You Learned, we were just really excited to bring that conversation to more folks, because it really has changed the way I think about what it means for little humans to be learning in the world today.
Great. Thank you, Staci. And my name is Mel Nichols, and I've been working with TutorCore and Pacific Preparatory for the last 8 years now, in all different roles. Currently, I serve as the Chief Operating Officer, and I'm a former teacher. I taught 7th and 8th grade in the Bay Area and also in Sacramento. I did Teach for America. I have a degree in secondary English education, and I pretty much always figured that I would be a lifelong teacher. I think even when I was a little kid, I would play teacher. And that just seemed very natural for me. And I did like teaching. I thought it was really fun and enjoyable, but there were also a lot of like pieces of it. I think I'm the type of person who naturally wants to do better, look for better, understand more. And parts of working in a school, kind of seeing behind the curtain, didn't feel exactly right. And I decided ultimately to leave the classroom and start working for TutorCore and Pacific Preparatory, sort of this education adjacent space as I saw it. And I didn't have any allegiance to individualized learning. I wasn't into tutoring previously. I tutored some of my students, but I wasn't tutored as a kid. And the more I think, over the last like several years, I have also had my own children. I have 2 little ones. I have an almost 6-year-old and I have a 2-year-old. And with my almost 6-year-old, I have, being a former teacher and being in the one-to-one education space still, I'm like, okay, I need to, figure out what school I want my child to go into. And I think this is sort of the funny thing. I think like a lot of, so I started diving in basically to like the home education world, homeschool world. And I learned that there are, because it's like very grassroots, there's a lot of different types of people. You can be like the super religious homeschool family, but you can also be like the secular, we're just trying to do what's best for our kids and live life and have structure and joy in learning. And so that is the camp that I fall into. And I also just like to do things my own way. And so we'll start homeschooling my almost 6-year-old starting in the fall. And the plan is for that to not just be a temporary thing, but I really like see that as, I think, something that we'll continue to do through the school years and maybe have, and be interested in do lots of different activities and lots of learning all the time. We don't have to do any sort of formal school with my kiddo right now. She just likes to learn, as kids naturally do. But yeah, I started reading. I'm a reader. I'm a researcher. I like to know. So I've listened to thousands of podcasts. I've read hundreds of books, have listened to countless just folks in the education space, and specifically now the home education or one-on-one education space, talk about like, how do we help kids thrive? And that's why I'm really excited to be on this podcast, because I think that is something that we maybe could do a little bit better. I think that a lot of kids in this country are struggling at all ends of the socioeconomic sphere. It's not dependent on, and sometimes kids who are in the higher income brackets are struggling in more in different ways. And so just kind of learning about all of these different things and these pieces and like, how do we actually help kids thrive? Like if we take out all the ego, all the like, but we've always done it this way. If we take out all of that, like what do we know and what does the science actually say about like how we create thriving kids, therefore thriving adults, therefore thriving society. And I think we're missing the mark in a lot of like really clear ways. So I'm really excited I love talking shop with Cory and Staci about this. And I am so excited to talk with just a range of professionals and, just folks who really care about kids and folks who care about education and like hear what they have to say about education and our kids, and then share it with all of you.
I think like one thing you just said, Mel, just made me think of, when you're talking about how our kids are struggling right now, I think as parents, the first thing we do when our kids are struggling with something, let's say school, is we say, what are we doing wrong as parents? Like, what are we contributing? Is it that my kids, I don't have enough structure. They don't have enough extracurriculars. They don't, and the point of this podcast is to really ask the question, well, is it the system that's failing our kids as opposed to something on the parents or something within the child that's really the source of the problem? Because I don't think, like I said in, my little introduction, I didn't really think, because I grew up in the traditional system, like you said, Staci, and I never thought about actually maybe the way we teach kids in this country isn't helping them to thrive, like you just said.
And all over the world too. I mean, this sort of factory model, for lack of a better term, it is something that's really used widely across the world. And I think that if it worked, we'd see maybe happier societies. And I think that's our ultimate goal, right? We want our kids to be happy. But yeah, I agree with you, Cory. It's thinking about the systems, the larger pieces at play, rather than adding it as another like bullet point on the list of the things that we quote unquote need to be doing as parents. But like really, where is like the larger society not supporting parents versus what do we do individually? And I think the answer is different for everyone, but I think there are a lot of really common themes that we all share and like just know in our hearts is like the right way to go for our kids. But for whatever reason, it's hard.
Yeah, it gives them, I think that the guests that you will hear come on the podcast this season are going to inspire you as parents to say, oh, there are people out there doing something different. I mean, I think it inspires some bravery. Like I think, Mel, I think of you as doing, this homeschool journey with your own kids as being brave because it's stepping outside of what everybody else does, quote unquote. But the more we shine a light on other people who are doing and thinking about education differently, maybe the more bravery it inspires.
Well, I think the reason it feels so brave, or even having these conversations feels sort of non-traditional, is just that like we are so attached to what we did. And so like, for instance, I felt like a pretty successful student. I got straight A's, I was valedictorian, I got a scholarship, I went on to grad school. I just kept checking every box. And so I think I hold on to that so deeply. Like I don't have children myself, but if I think about raising children and what I'd want for them in school, I'm like, oh, well, I'm successful and I did those things. So they would have to do those things too. But like what that isn't taking into account is the full picture. Like I also have some neurotic tendencies because I'm a little bit of an anxious people pleaser because I liked getting the A and it felt so hard to not get A's. And so it feels scary to think outside of that because you are risking something. You're like, well, what happens if we change the rules? What happens if we think about child happiness, to use Mel's term, like happiness as the primary goal, not necessarily make little replicas of exactly what we did. And I think that's why it feels scary and brave, just because we're all in a position that it's, we've only done it one way or versions of that same way. And so it feels like a leap of faith to try to do it a little differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting too, like as a whole, it's like, we want society to be happy. We want our kids to be happy. And there's also so much more to it. We want our kids to know how to like live in a community and like get along with others. And like you said, Staci, like those anxious tendencies, we see so many people. I mean, if you look at studies, but you don't even have to look at studies, you can talk to your colleagues and friends and like just know how prevalent that like adult anxiety is, or this feeling like I have to fit in this box and stay in this box and not realize like you can chart your own sort of territory. And I think it's good for kids to know that there are all sorts of options, and that, like, being challenged and doing hard things is so important. And also finding your true path. We know, so many kids graduate from school and they don't know what they want to do, or they think they want to know what they want to do. And then they don't actually, when they get to college, they're like, actually, I don't know about that. Or for me, I thought, there was like 10 career options and one was to be a teacher. So I did that. And then I realized, actually, like, now as an adult, there are a lot of things that I don't like about this. And yeah, I think that it's just this is a great format just to say, hey, not everything will work for everyone, and everyone has to do it their own way. But we also have to stop pretending that everything is working beautifully, because it's clearly not.
Right. And like in one of the episodes, you'll hear there's a guest who talks about, taking baby steps,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like, it's obviously a huge leap for someone like me to pull my kids out of school and, start unschooling them. And that, her point was, you don't have to do that. Like, you can start small, which is, for one example that we've done in my own household is changing the way we talk about grades. They're in a school where there is, there's a focus on grades, but it's not even necessarily only coming from the school. It's the community, like the group of parents that, are very driven. And so their kids are driven and, all of this, but that doesn't have to be us. And a little change can just be, you know what? You're in middle school, you getting some B's, maybe even a C, like, it's okay. And what's a bigger priority is, like, not only your mental health, because we don't want all of that pressure and anxiety to build, but also the point of going to school is learning. It's not getting a grade, it's learning. And so if we can change the conversation to, like, what did you learn? And if you didn't learn anything, okay, like, we're just going to move on from that. And it's not going to, I don't want my kids to internalize any of that. So, like, I was really encouraged by that conversation, because I can tell you honestly, I'm not ready to unschool my kids. I just personally am not ready for that. But that doesn't mean that we can't make some progress in the right direction in terms of protecting their well-being.
I like the mention of, like, protecting their well-being, because I think that's what we always try to come at it from, like, after the fact, like, oh, my perfectionist child now has, like, severe anxiety, or my we're sort of seeing, like, all these things have happened, and we're sort of trying to address them on the back end with, like, an hour of therapy a week or something like that. And it's like, but wait, we'll make so much more headway if we actually go from the other end and think about how do we protect our kids' mental health from the start? Like, instead of trying to repair it when it's already damaged, how do we just make sure that from the start they're good, and so that they don't have to deal with things that are unnecessary to thriving.
Well, and I think a large part of it then is, like, moving away from, like, individual culpability and blame and shame to questioning the system. So even, Cory, this example you just gave, you're like, oh, and then even if you didn't learn anything, that's okay, let's move on. And I think that piece is so important, because it's like, yeah, if they didn't learn anything, is this a deficit of theirs, or is this a deficit of the system that is, creating them? And so, Mel, you'd given the example of, like, trying to fix something from the back end with, like, 1 hour of therapy a week or whatever. And I feel like that's also, again, it's like putting the individual in charge of their own, of healing themselves when they're not the one that harmed themselves too. So, like, really just thinking about, like, how can we create these systems that, are more protective, are more kind, have more grace, as opposed to this, like, very cutthroat yet inadequate system that then says, well, why did you fail at this system? This must be you, when, like, really the whole thing was damaged to begin with. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a lot of really important conversations to be had there.
Well, we are hoping that you're interested in listening to the season. There's some really fascinating people coming on to just talk about their unique perspectives. Some of them are parents themselves. Some of them are, in the mental health space. Some of them have schools that are doing things very differently, that in ways that you may not never have imagined. And it's going to be, just a really nice variety of folks coming on and talking about the themes that we've talked about today. So from Mel, Staci, and myself, Cory, the host, we are really looking forward to having you along for the ride.
Great. Thank you, Cory.
Thanks.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Forget What You Learned, hosted by me, Cory Greenberg. As always, our goal is to allow you to zoom out on the snapshot of your family's life and answer the question, are my kids thriving? We're here to inspire you to make those small and maybe big changes to answer yes. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Pacific Preparatory and Tutor Corps, sister organizations committed to educating students with an innovative and holistic approach in today's digital world. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave a rating and review. See you next time.